Good morning. Welcome from Lowell Observatory. We are here on another beautiful morning for Cosmic Coffee up bright and early. And I would just like to welcome everyone who's listening. I've got with me Dave Sawyer from Lowell Observatory, who is the technical project manager for really all of our capital projects happening on Mars Hill. And today we're going to talk about the various things that are going on and give you a virtual tour of all of these different things that are happening. Before we get rolling with that, we're going to acknowledge, as we always do, one of our local coffee places. This morning it's a little bit of a twofer with Off the Rails, which is part of Late for the Train Coffee. So I've got a nice Dark Skies mocha from them. Always love to support Dark Skies here in Flagstaff. Dave, what are you drinking?
Well, I'm more of a vanilla kind of guy, so I just have a straightforward cappuccino here.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, Dave, can you give us a little preview about what we're going to see this morning?
Yes, so we have a lot of projects going on here on Mars Hill, and we thought just talking about them, might be a little bit confusing. So we did some prearranged videos to actually give you a little bit of a tour of some of the projects that are going on now. We have a master plan for a campus expansion that involves many components and many different projects. And we're only going to touch on a little bit of that today. And maybe, if we have time, we can actually talk about the full gamut of projects, the things we've completed, the things we have planned, what the sequence might be. There's a lot to it. So I think we should go ahead and start with our little tour of the projects that we are currently working on today as we speak.
Okay, and just before we get into that, can you give us a sense of why these are the projects that we're working on at the moment versus others?
Yes, good question. We sort of are in between phases, and phase one was the Giovale Open Deck Observatory, and we completed that and opened last fall. And then the next phase will be the Astronomy Discovery Center, which we hope to start work on that later this year or early next year. And so we're kind of in between projects, but because we had to shut down because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we actually took advantage to do some work on things that would be more difficult when there are visitors here on the Hill. And so two of the projects we'll look at, which are the reconfiguring the entrance for the new Astronomy Discovery Center, and the second is the GODO, the Giovale Open Deck Observatory walkway, which we had a temporary footpath that foots the Flagstaff Urban Trail System mix. And we thought it would make it kind of, more like a nature walk around. But it turns out that the foots mix does get pretty muddy when it's wet, and we get a lot of snow up here. So it didn't work out so well. So we took the opportunity to improve that walkway, and we'll talk about that.
Great. Yeah, that would definitely be difficult to do with guests here on campus. Okay, well, folks, we'll get this first highlight going for you, and we'll be back after this short video.
Good morning, everyone. We thought we'd start our little mini campus tour here in front of the Steel Visitor Center so that everybody can get oriented of where we are. And so we're going to start just south of the visitor parking lot here with work that we actually started last year and in the fall. And so you can see behind me here we built a warehouse to provide storage for a lot of the materials we were going to be needing during construction of our different facilities. So we put in this warehouse, and behind the warehouse we put in what we call the mini loop road. And the original intention of that was to allow us to create a one-way loop through this parking lot to deal with traffic problems when we have the large crowds we normally have. As we discussed a little earlier in the program, one of the parts of the campus expansion is the Astronomy Discovery Center. And this loop road that we put in last year will actually become the main entrance to the visitor parking lot for that. And we're going to go down there shortly and take a closer look at it. And one last thing before we move on is this area beside the warehouse is going to be the site of the future tech center. And while we were building the warehouse, we decided to level that to create an expansion parking lot to use temporarily. But in the future, that will be the site of the technology center. So we're going to go ahead and head over to the beginning of the loop road, where we've been doing some recent work on reconfiguring it for the future Astronomy Discovery Center. Okay, so here we are at the beginning of the loop road, and behind me here is the first road stub out that we're creating. This has all the utilities for the ADC running underneath this section of road, and this will continue on just south of the Putnam Collection Center and actually be the service entrance for the Astronomy Discovery Center. This is where the service trucks will come into the facility. And then over here, you can see behind the orange fence there where the stub out for the main entrance road to the parking lot of the Astronomy Discovery Center will continue on. And the reason we're doing these now is because, as you can see, we're having to dig up the roads and the parking lots a lot, and getting this done while we don't have visitors on site it helped a lot because of safety concerns and also vehicle traffic, and we have piles of materials in the parking lot. We wouldn't be able to do that if we needed the parking lot. So taking this opportunity to get this done is really helpful, and what it will allow us to do is, when we start the Astronomy Discovery Center, either later this fall or early next spring, we'll be able to construct the construction fence across these stub outs so that all construction will happen behind the fence, and all construction vehicles will use the new loop road as an access road, so we won't have any construction traffic going through the visitor parking lot when we are open for business. Again, hopefully in a short amount of time. Yes, it is coming along, and we hope to be finished with that work in the next week or two. So clearly, before we open, and having that done, as I mentioned, will really make construction in the future a lot easier and less obstructive to the visitor experience here.
Yeah, and so with the warehouse that you mentioned in that segment as well, currently you mentioned that we're using that for temporary storage items during construction. What's the long-term intent for that?
Well, it's yeah, basically, I did mention temporary storage, but it's actually temporary and long-term storage. And prior to building the warehouse, we had a garage that we had to demolish because it was up by where the GODO is. And So there's a lot of material that we have stored on site and needed a place for that. And in the future, once we have the tech center down there, we hope that will become more like a central distribution center. So all deliveries will go to the warehouse and then be distributed or dispersed from there to the other facilities on Mars Hill. And so as part of that, warehouse is actually a little smaller than we originally intended to build, but we designed it so that it is expandable to the south. And when we build the tech center, we may actually expand the building at that time to provide more storage or to create a different technical work area, such as a fab area or a wood shop or something like that.
Great. All right. Well, let's go on to the next segment. And here we are going to be heading up to the Giovale Open Deck Observatory, where we have a brand new pedway. All right. We'll be right back.
Okay, so I think that concludes this area. Now we're going to move on to the next project that we're currently working on, which is replacing the pedway around the Giovale Open Deck Observatory. So we're going to head on up that way. See you there. At the beginning of the new pedway going up to the Giovale Open Deck Observatory, which we affectionately call the GODO. And just to get oriented, to my left here is the Slifer building and the Slifer Plaza. And so visitors will come up the plaza here and to the beginning of the pedway, and then follow the pedway around to the GODO to my right. And it continues past, we'll walk up there, and ends at the Pluto Dome. Now I just wanted to mention a few things about the pedway, and then we'll head up. The pedway is a work in process. It's not complete. We've poured all of the concrete to produce the sidewalk, but you'll notice that on one edge of the sidewalk there's a curb. And the purpose of that curb is, number one, it provides the structural support for these steel embeds that will hold a future railing that will install the entire length of the pedway with lighting on it that we can turn on and off as needed. This curb also provides a white cane edge for ADA accessibility. This part of the walk is not ADA compliant for slopes, but we have an entrance farther up we'll look at that is compliant. The last thing I want to mention about the pedway is that we've embedded glow stones, stones that are phosphorescent at night, and after dark the edges of this walkway glow with this neat blue color, and it's really an experience you have to see. So we're going to go ahead and walk up the pedway to the main entrance of the GODO. Okay, here we are at the first node of the walkway. We're at the main entrance of the GODO, and this node I'm standing on is actually a glowing globular cluster. It also has the glow stones. This has two colors, a blue and an aqua glowstone, and a little bit of hazy cloudiness to it. So it really gives a very cool 3D effect when you're standing here at night. And then to my right here, this is our ADA accessible ramp to the this Giovale Open Deck Observatory Plaza and all the way up to the Pluto Dome. And so we're going to go ahead and continue our walk around up to the next node, which is in front of the new restrooms. Okay, and here we are at the second node, which we call these nodes, but they're really like intersections where you might need to, do some wayfinding. And so at this particular node, we have the ADA access to the Giovale Open Deck Observatory. To my right is the new restrooms. And behind me, the path continues up to the Pluto Discovery Telescope, which we'll head to right now. Okay, and here we are at the end of the GODO pedway, or the beginning, I guess, depending on your perspective. But we're up here right in front of the Pluto Discovery Telescope. And as you can see, I'm standing on the existing Pluto walk, so the new pedway connects to the Pluto walk and creates a big loop around the Giovale Open Deck Observatory. Okay, and one more thing while we're here, behind me you might notice a large tent, and this is part of the changes that are occurring here in the public program because of the pandemic. And what the tent will do is allow a lot of the educators to talk to the people outside where they can be socially distant, and then from there take small groups into the telescope. And that will keep people from being too close inside.
All right. Lots of exciting things happening up at the GODO.
Yes, indeed. So I think I mentioned in the video that the last step on finishing that pathway is the sealing of the exposed aggregate walkway, which is actually happening at this very moment as we speak. They're up there doing that sealing, and that will finish the sidewalk part of it. And then sometime in the future, we'll add the railing and the lighting. It's at some later time to be determined. We haven't actually scheduled that work yet.
Awesome. And that's really great that that whole area is designed for really improving ADA access so that, as many people as possible can enjoy the new observing plaza.
Yes, that is, one of our goals with this whole campus expansion is to be accessible and ADA plus whenever we can. I mentioned at the beginning that the first part of the GODO pedway is not ADA compliant for slopes, but that's really a temporary part. The main visitor path that connects the Astronomy Discovery Center to the GODO, to the Slifer Plaza will all be fully ADA compliant. And that, will happen after we build the Astronomy Discovery Center, but it is part of the master plan.
Fantastic. And you mentioned lights aren't in yet, but of course the glow stones are in. And we have a brief walkthrough in the evening. Now, you who are watching at home or wherever you are, you may want to brighten up your monitor a little bit because it is a bit dark, but we can get a sense here for what's going on. So I'll just get this going, and Dave, we can talk over this as it's running. So right now we just have a stationary shot here looking up the pedway towards the GODO. The GODO is up on the upper right of the image there. And this is a time lapse, so it's getting dark rather quickly. And then once it's dark enough, then we'll get moving. And yep, here we go. So you can see the pathway with the glowing stones on either side of the pathway, marking the edges very nicely. And then we're coming up now to that first globular cluster, the first node, and then coming around by the wash house to the second globular cluster, second node. And then here we're making a turn to enter the plaza itself and coming upon some of our telescopes. That there was filmed while we were doing interactive stargazing, or as we were preparing for it just a couple nights ago.
So
And,
one thing to mention is that, you know, the video of that does not do it justice.
No.
I mean, the experience of walking on that walk with those glowing stones is almost kind of surreal.
It's incredible, especially when the moon isn't up. It's so brilliant. I mean, it doesn't affect anything in the sky, of course, but it's this beautiful luminescent pathway. And I've got a couple still images here. So we'll look at this one showing the globular cluster by the bathroom, the wash house. And you can see its core is brighter. There's kind of that dusty material around it, as you mentioned. And then in the background, you can see the glowing edges of the pedway itself. So this is one of two nodes like this. And then we have another image that shows a portion of the pedway heading towards the Pluto dome.
And we should mention that the stones along the path are a blue color. And then for the globular clusters, we used a blue color and a aqua color to give it some more depth. And it almost does give it a 3D kind of feel.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty cool walking on top of them. And of course, they fade out towards the center of the pathways. We've got a couple questions coming in regarding the glowstones. Question from Kent Callbath. Who came up with the idea for the glowstones?
That's a good question. Boy, I don't know for sure, but it was came out of our team for developing the interactive experiences up here, and that involves consultants as well as people on our staff like Samantha Gorney, who is the Director of Education. And the idea came from that group in our planning, but whose idea it was, I'm not exactly sure, 100%.
Yeah, and I guess this is a good point to give big props to Samantha Gorney as well as Sarah Bircher, our manager for the public program, who came out many very early mornings to hand place all of these glowstones throughout I don't know how many hundreds of feet of concrete walkway.
It was about a little over 500 feet of walkway, and it was Sarah and Curtis and Kevin and Sarah, Curtis, Kevin, and Samantha, the four that laid the stones. And we required 4 people on these early mornings just to be able to keep up and get them poured quick enough, because there's a little window where they have to be put on while the concrete is wet, and then the contractors then tamp them down into the wet concrete, and then come back the next day and actually spray the surface to expose the aggregate and the glowstones. And so, yes, there was many mornings starting at 3:30 a.m. pouring glowstones, and that was over probably about a 3-week period. So, yes, thanks.
Yeah.
And a lot of times this was after a night of training for them too. So
yes, indeed. I remember talking with Sarah Bircher in particular during interactive stargazing late at night and getting ready for either another lay down of stones the next day, or having already done that same morning and having a very long day indeed. And Sarah Bircher, I see, is on chat. So if you have a memory of who originated this idea, then let us know. So this is a really neat expansion project that just is transforming the experience when you're here at the Giovale Open Deck Observatory. Again, outside at night, especially when the moon's not around, is just utterly gorgeous being on these pedways. And then I will note, continuing along the lines of our ADA discussion before, that we also, in doing this, have installed 2 concrete pads for wheelchairs and other mobility devices right next to a couple of those benches. All right, so we have a third stop in this tour, don't we, Dave?
Yes, we do.
All right, well, let's get into that video, and then we'll be back after it's done.
So we're going to go ahead and continue down the Pluto walk, because our next stop is going to be the new Dyer telescope, which was formerly the McAllister telescope. And we're heading there now. Okay, and our final stop on this little campus mini tour today is the dome, which many of you know as the McAllister Dome, but now it's been upgraded with a new telescope. And so now this is being called the Dyer telescope. We'll go inside in a minute and look at that. And this plaza remains the McAllister Observing Plaza. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead inside and take a look at the improvements we've made to the inside of the dome. Okay, so this is the new Dyer telescope. It's a 24-inch diameter PlaneWave CDK 24 instrument. In order to install this, it actually took quite a bit of work inside the dome. Those of you that have been here and seen the old Baller and Shivens 16-inch telescope, which was an equatorial mount, there was a huge concrete pier to the south of the inside of the dome, which actually really restricted space and movement inside the dome. We had to jackhammer that pier out and then dig down and install a new centrally located pier for this Alt-Az telescope. And you can see by doing that, it opened up a lot of floor space. It's completely accessible all the way around the telescope. This pier goes down to bedrock and is isolated from this floor I'm standing on, which we also redid and refinished. And we also did modifications to the lighting. All of the step lights now are red LED floor lights, and then we also have some ambience lights to illuminate the dome, as well as task lighting for maintenance and just times when more lighting is needed. So all of the lighting and electrical has been upgraded. The inside of the dome has been painted, and this brand new telescope is installed, and it's commissioned and fully functional, and we're anxious to start using it. The one thing that's left to do in here is to actually automate the dome so that it will follow the telescope. Right now, so it's a manual operation only, but we are working on automating that so it will follow the telescope automatically. The plan is to have this telescope, an eyepiece telescope, and so visitors will actually look through this telescope with their eye, and then potentially we can add instrumentation on the back of this if we so decide. And the one last interesting thing about this telescope is it's right next to the Clark telescope, which is also a 24-inch telescope. So these are exactly the same size. And so just by looking at how compact this is, you can really see the difference between a modern reflecting telescope and a 123-year-old, 124-year-old refracting telescope. Okay, so that concludes our tour, and so we'll see you in the studio. Bye.
And we're closing out the video here with a nice pull-out at night with the dome and the red lights on inside. Great.
Yes. So I've had the pleasure of seeing images from that telescope with a Malincam CCD camera, but have not yet been able to look through that eyepiece. So I really look forward to that because they're pretty exquisite images, and that telescope, has a corrected field of view of a degree. So it's going to be pretty amazing looking at objects through that.
Yes, and the upgrade from the old 16-inch Buller and Chivens to this state-of-the-art modern PlaneWave 24-inch telescope is really going to be something that's noticeable for those of our viewers who have been to the McAllister Dome previously. And, in recognition of that original gift from the McAllisters, we did want to preserve the name of the plaza for them. And so we have this Dyer telescope at the McAllister Public Observing Plaza. So really great. And, it's a nice thing to be able to honor our donors in these kinds of ways.
Indeed.
So with this Dyer telescope, do we have a time frame for when it's going to be fully done with the dome all ready to go?
Well, you mean fully automated?
Right.
I don't know the time scale. I mean, the facility can be used as it is, and for public program observing where you're pointing at a given object for usually a longer period of time so that different people can see it. It's not, super critical that the dome tracks the telescope. I mean, it would have to be bumped on occasion. But that telescope does slew very quickly. And for anybody that's watched interactive stargazing, you've seen how quickly those telescopes can slew to new objects. And if we are using the telescope in a mode like that, then it will be critical that that dome tracks so that it can quickly follow where the telescope is pointing. Now, as far as timeline, I don't know that that work is being done by our within our technology group here, by an electrical engineer who works for that group, and they have many responsibilities and priorities, and this work is, scheduled as much as can be, but obviously where we're supporting other telescopes like the LDT, the Lowell Discovery Telescope, and the facilities at Anderson Mesa. When instruments break, they always take priority over things like these project upgrades. And so it's hard to schedule it for sure. So I don't know the answer to that. The work is underway in automating the dome, but how long it will take is unknown.
Okay. Well, we're all really excited to see what happens here and be able to start using that beautiful new telescope. Really, just in the past, not even a year, 8 months, it's been spectacular to see all of these new telescopes going up on Mars Hill, and really designed for engaging our guests who come and giving them spectacular views of the night sky. And as we're talking here, we've got the campus map up, and this map has changed so many times just in the past year as these projects have gone along. And today we've literally walked all the way around our current public campus, starting down in the lower left there with the stub outs for the Astronomy Discovery Center roadways, up to the top of the image here with the Giovale Open Deck Observatory and its new walkways, and then over to the bottom right where we've ended up at the new Dyer telescope. So if those who are watching, please feel free to ask questions about any of these three projects, or perhaps other items related to this expanding campus master plan.
And maybe while those are coming in, we could mention that while you have this map up here, that black area to the bottom left of the picture is where we plan to build the Astronomy Discovery Center, which will be the next big project as part of our master plan. And that will be like 35,000 square foot science center with a immersive type theater. It will have a rooftop planetarium where the night sky is the dome of the planetarium, as well as other facilities. The gift shop will move over there, and there will be a cafe and function or an event hall and classroom, and it's quite an impressive facility. Oh, and exhibit halls as well.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And as we're getting deeper and deeper into planning stages and starting to see some artist conceptions of what it might look like, it's going to be a phenomenal addition to the Mars Hill campus here. Even just last fall, when we added the Giovale Open Deck Observatory and that went live, it immediately changed the flavor of the campus. It was incredible to see people now going, from the GODO all the way over to the Clark telescope and everything in between. So that Astronomy Discovery Center will really be an amazing thing. And we're still targeting spring of 2023, correct, for opening?
That's right. That's what our target date is. And there are still some uncertainties in that. I mean, the fundraising is going well, but there's still a little ways to go on that before we're ready to actually start construction. And we really need to start the at-risk grading work this fall, which means removing trees and blasting rock and things like that. And if we can't get to the point where we can start that this fall, then we probably won't be able to make the March 2023 deadline, because it's roughly a 2-year construction project. And then this will be a fairly complex facility. It require 6 months or so of fit up with exhibits, and the technology in the Universe Theater will be first rate, unsurpassed, and then training the educators in all the new features and developing programs. I mean, it's all going to take time, and so our target date is the spring of 2023, but it really means that the stars have to align for us, and we really can hit the ground running this fall on this project.
Great. Well, it'll be exciting once things get going. And if any of our viewers want to be part of making that happen, you can go to lowell.edu/ADC for Astronomy Discovery Center, and you can see a video with some artist and architectural renderings, as well as different giving opportunities, and our pretty recent floor plan. I think there may have been an iteration that needs to go up there yet. But that'll give you a real good sense of what we're looking at with this new Astronomy Discovery Center. There is a question that came in, Dave, and this is from Travis. He asks, what sort of science experiments and observations are ongoing or planned for the future at Lowell or the Lowell Discovery Telescope?
Boy, that's a hard question. So as far as the science experiments, I mean, those are evolving all the time, and there are programs, and I believe there's a streaming program now available on our site for doing science experiments for the public and children. If you're talking about for professional work, that's, we do have observing facilities here that are used for research, such as the LDT. It's a 4.3 meter telescope. And there is a lot of science going on there, but I would say, rather than me trying to pretend to know all of the great things that are being done with that, I would suggest, looking back at the Meet an Astronomer streaming videos, because a lot of those are talking about science that the astronomers here are actually doing.
Great. All right. Well, looks like that's our questions for this morning. Thank you all so much for joining us for this cup of cosmic coffee. I believe our 15th cup of cosmic coffee. So we've been doing this 15 weeks now, and it's been a real pleasure to meet with you every Thursday morning. So thank you so much. Any last closing words, Dave?
No, I don't think so, but thank you, everybody. And please come and see these great facilities once we open again and you're able to.
All right. Yes, indeed. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. We'll sign off now. Take care and have a fantastic day.
Bye.